Do you enjoy being underinformed? Do you like being punished? And do you feel a deep personal need to be proven wrong by a piece of software? Good. This game has been waiting for you. Let's talk about Devil May Cry 1 and why it mistakes cruelty for confidence. Devil May Cry 1 is a game about killing yard wildlife, puppets, and everything in between. Discovering how family history is the cause of most of your problems, and fighting the camera harder than the actual enemies. This is not a metaphor. The camera will sabotage you more times than anything with a health bar. This game released in 2001 and somehow predicted modern game design by making sure the real villain is never on the screen. Sometimes the villain is off-screen, sometimes it is behind the wall, sometimes it is the angle itself. But what makes this game modern? How did we end up here? This question will come up often, usually right before you die. The camera will also make you reconsider how you move through space, even if you're careful. It never goes away. You can spend minutes staring at a hallway, then the camera betrays you. Devil May Cry 1 is a mixed game, sort of like my browser history. You don't want to explain it, but it all makes sense. Not because it's bad, actually, it's shockingly good, but it feels like it was made entirely by accident. This was supposed to be a Resident Evil 4. Instead, it became a hack and slash fiesta, starring Johnny Cage, if it was never just a phase. You can feel the Resident Evil DNA, mostly in the keys, and the backtracking, and the doors. Despite the game being held together by Oktar, and the camera being actively not cooperating, Devil May Cry 1 created an entire genre, most of which later fixed the camera. So today we're going to talk about why this game works, why it absolutely does not, and why Dante has mommy issues that nobody talks about enough. The game also doesn't talk about them, which is what I prefer as well, so it feels like they do it on purpose. You will spend hours just watching Dante move through the castle without barely explanation of the story, yet somehow it communicates the story perfectly. Kill what's moving and get all the keys. Within the first 30 minutes of gameplay you will meet the main antagonist, the camera. Usually games reserve a boss fight for defeating the ultimate evil. Here it's a constant battle. Unlike Talking to My Ex, combat is simple, satisfying, and doesn't panic when things don't go their way. You press buttons, things happen, usually in the correct order. Sometimes you press buttons and things don't happen. You've got swords, school supplies, and whatever this is. If it looks like it was designed out of spite, and it hits accordingly. Following the school theme, this game gives you grades, and if the camera is on its 5-minute attention span attempt, you can get an S, which is proven to give a dopamine rush and more red orbs. I do not remember what the lower ranks were, I only remember disappointment. This game rewards you for being like an anime AMV with 3 days grace in the background. Standing still is punished, looking cool is encouraged. The game never explains this. You learn naturally through failure. Similar to Unresolved's childhood trauma, Dante taunts his weird uncles in the middle of an altercation, the difference being he gets rewarded for doing so. In real life this would escalate the situation. Here it is the optimal play. Sometimes enemies respond in unpredictable ways, sometimes they don't respond at all. Spoiler alert, camera bad. This is not an exaggeration, this is a warning. Devil May Cry 1 uses fixed camera angles, which was fine for Resident Evil back in 1996, but this is not the Spice Girls era anymore. The game wants speed, the game wants control, so I'll tell you what I want, what I really want. A game where enemies don't teleport behind you while the camera is emotionally locked onto a wall. This happens often. In order to keep my sanity, I had to play on easy to keep the flow going. This did not fix the camera. Nothing fixes the camera. Platforming is still shit. Sometimes the camera is cinematic, sometimes it's malicious, sometimes it's both at once. You can only guess its motives. Even simple jumps become puzzles, even empty hallways become obstacles. Game thrives on confusion. Platforming. Joy is temporary, gravity is forever. Exploring this castle feels like dating a goth girl with 5 personalities. It can be fun at times, but all of them hate platforming, and every personality has keys. One minute you're sending what's under the bed back to hell, the next minute you're solving puzzles that feel like they were designed by someone who eats raw lettuce. None of the puzzles are hard, they are just annoying, which is even worse. The game constantly sends you back through the same rooms, a lot, which is great if you enjoy getting slapped by the same enemies again. Sometimes they remember. sometimes they don't. Either way, you're fighting again. This is Resident Evil DNA, desperately trying to come out of that dark basement. The layout is designed to make you feel lost, and it works. You start noticing patterns, you start noticing repetition, you start noticing despair. At some point, Devil May Cry 1 decides you need a new perspective, and what better perspective than swapping places with an unborn baby. This section is meant to make you recall your last moments before it all went wrong. Walls squish, floors bounce, really trying to capture the essence of what's happening to you after a night with the boys. It is horrifying. It is confusing. It is slightly mesmerizing. The lighting is wrong, the angles are wrong, everything hates you even more here than usual. You fall, you miss jumps, and you try again. And enemies exist to remind you that physics do not matter in this place. You ask yourself, why am I inside the belly? The answer, because the game wants you to feel small, lost, and slightly nauseated. Even if it doesn't make sense narratively, it makes sense as a game design moment. It tests your patience, tests your awareness, and it rewards careful movement, as careful as it can be. When you finally leave, you feel accomplished. Or traumatized. Maybe both. Mostly, you just need to keep moving, because there's no pause button in a belly. Devil May Cry 1 has a story. It exists, it functions, it is not subtle, it is loud, sometimes over the top, sometimes barely coherent, and that somehow makes it memorable. Dante's entire personality is hard coping. His mother is dead, his brother is missing, and his dad is a legendary demon warrior. This is the condensed version of trauma. Years of unresolved family drama packed into fighting demons. No therapy sessions, no reflection, just action. So naturally, Dante responds like any other rational man would do in this situation. Dante meets a woman who looks conveniently familiar and immediately decides this is emotionally fine. Try to kill him, he can fix her. And honestly, good for him. The game does not question this, you are not supposed to either. You accept it, because the game moves fast, there is no time for reflection. Just style points, combos, and plot twists. It's almost a philosophy. The philosophy of act first, question never. Besides, this game has some of the most memorable voice acting in gaming.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light! Fight with that wound.
Mighty is the power of Mundus. Master, grant me one last surge of power. The power to finish him.
Memorable doesn't mean subtle. Sometimes lines are shouted, sometimes whispered, sometimes weirdly monotone. They all work somehow. You can't look away. Let's say when it comes to bosses, beggars aren't choosers. Besides the final fight, you will have 12 boss fights with the same 4 enemies. The game hopes you won't notice. You will notice. Some of them legitimately feel good. These are the fights people remember. Others feel like you're trying to stay alive during the Spanish flu, but you know better than to trust the I changed. They did not change. They came back louder. Bosses often repeat attacks. Sometimes you remember the pattern, sometimes you don't remember the hitbox. It's a dance of frustration. Some bosses are cinematic nightmares. Some bosses are just numbers on the screen. All bosses make you question your life choices. All bosses are fun, eventually. The final boss is memorable, not for difficulty, but for sheer presence. The music, the lighting, the dramatic swings, it's a culmination of everything the game is. Janky, stylish, and unforgettable. You may scream, you may laugh, sometimes simultaneously, and the game doesn't apologize for any of it. Devil May Cry 1 is raw. It's janky, the camera needs an exorcism, but it has that kind of charm from the goth girl you can't find anywhere else. This game walked so the franchise could run. And honestly, for a game held together by edginess, trauma, and bad camera angles, it's still kind of a flawed gem. Even if the camera disagrees, it was worth it.